Hi. Sorry about the long wait between What If uploads. I have been really busy with graduating from my senior year of high school, but I'm almost out of there, and once that's over, I'll have a lot more free time, so videos should be uploading a lot more consistently and a lot more normally. Also, this was my first What If with the new cast, so I had a lot of difficulties writing for the cast because it's a whole bunch of new characters that I don't fully understand yet, so I had a lot of difficulties with that. I hope you understand. You probably do. All of you are very understanding about this. And with that said, what if MK didn't blow her cover to Julia? Now, if you're confused what the title's referring to, basically I'm talking about in MK's elimination episode. She calls Julia a butt knuckle, which is Julia's insult that she's been calling everybody else solely in confessionals, which then clues in Julia that MK has been spying on everybody in the confessionals. So this what if is exploring if that didn't happen and MK didn't blow her cover to Julia. And with that change, this first episode is a pretty easy one to talk about since Julia was the clear target before MK got exposed. So now that MK isn't getting exposed, Julia would be eliminated. That is all, and we are now at the merge. MK up till this point has been playing a very casual game, so I don't see a reason why she'd go out of her way to talk to anybody come merge, meaning the pre-challenge remains completely unaffected as Chris merges the teams. When Chris mentions people having to get into pairs for the challenge, MK would have a confessional annoyed since she doesn't do well in teams, and because it just became the merge, she was hoping she would go solo. The original 4 pairs of Millie, Priya, Ripper, Z, Rain, Raj, Bowie, Emma all teamed up pretty instantaneously, meaning MK would be forced to partner with Chase as he's the only one left. MK wouldn't like this, but figures that his stupidity could make him a good person to go with, as he will be an easy target for the murder birds. Julia was originally campaigning to get Chase out, but I don't feel that MK would feel the need to do the same, because Julia was trying to get Chase out because she was a huge target among the cast because of the video getting released, but MK isn't a huge target among the cast. I don't have any super clear ideas of MK's strategy because she doesn't talk about it a ton, but she does state early on that part of her strategy is to fly under the radar, so keeping people like Chase in the game would make it easier for her to go unnoticed because he's such a big, brash, socially unaware personality. So I think MK would actually try to help Chase rekindle with Emma, but unlike Julia who did it to make them fight more, she would actually be trying to help him. Because if Chase could rekindle his relationship with Emma, then he might stay in the game a bit longer, but can also bring Emma down with him since they could be viewed as a power couple, which makes them an easy vote. Also, Emma has a lot of confessionals hating on Chase, but she does have a lot of ones underlying that she missed what they had, and since MK hacked the confessionals, she would know that there's still a chance of them getting back together. While they are traveling together, MK would offer to help Chase get back with Emma, and in exchange, he always votes whatever way MK tells him to, which is a harsh deal, but Chase is desperate to get back with Emma, so he agrees. MK and Chase would approach Emma and Bowie in pairs, and MK would pull Bowie away to talk to him one-on-one. Originally, Julia made a deal with Bowie that they go off together to find eggs since she already knew where some were, and I have no reason to believe that MK wouldn't have also found the eggs that Julia did, because MK is just as, if not more perceptive than Julia. So MK would tell Bowie that she'll inform him where some eggs are if she ditches Emma and votes whatever MK wants him to today. Bowie is suspicious of what MK wants of Emma, but he really wants to win the first challenge, so he agrees to MK's deal as MK points him the way she saw the eggs. MK grins having a confessional saying that with Bowie out of the picture, she should have no issues getting the 2 lovebirds back together, but she walks back to Chase and Emma with Emma twisting Chase's hand behind his back, making MK sigh, realizing it might be harder than she thought. Emma asks MK where Bowie went, and again, because MK watches everyone's confessionals, she'd be able to use the fact that Bowie and Raj like each other, and say that Raj borrowed him, making Emma annoyed that Bowie left her alone with Chase. But since she's extremely supportive of Bowie and Raj, and with some pressuring by MK and Chase, she decides to join them because she doesn't want to face the deadly birds alone. I'm pretty sure that Priya and Millie end up coming back with an egg first. Bowie isn't dealing with Julia anymore and is seen to be pretty athletic, but Julia was nowhere close to getting back to Chris first. So I don't really think Bowie would be able to either because I'm assuming the spot where Julia/MK now saw the eggs is pretty far away from Chris. Meaning Millie wins the challenge after Priya offers it to her and she takes it. MK, Emma, and Chase would still get to the cave that Emma and Chase originally get to, as Emma goes in to find eggs, telling MK and Chase to stay as lookouts. Chase would try to follow Emma into the cave, but MK would stop him since she's trying to help him get back together with Emma, so she stops him and tells him how he has to listen to her if he ever wants to get back with her, instead of ignoring her every request. But Chase, being as egocentric as he is, would blow off MK's comment, saying that doesn't sound right and trust him, he's a master of love. And when MK snarkily denies that notion, he says he'll just go in and ask Emma if that's true, and then walk into the cave. MK tries to stop him once more, but notices a dangerous bird following him, and doesn't feel like risking her life for them, so just kinda shrugs shrugs and walks off, saying she tried. The Chase and Emma scene plays out the same, with them running away and Chase dropping the chocolate bar and apologizing for that, making Emma think he apologized for the everything, leading to them getting back together as a couple. Chase and Emma come back to the group, revealing they are a couple again. MK smirks while having a confessional, being happy that her plan ended up working, and a nice bonus of neither of them dying. From here, the rest of the episode plays out the same, everything the same with the challenge, and even the same elimination of the hockey bros being eliminated because there's no reason they still wouldn't get injured and removed from the game. The episode would start with previous members of the Ferocious Trout noticing some of their stuff missing. I think this happens because MK in her elimination episode was shown to have stolen stuff from her team with the idea of reselling it once the show's over, and if the teams merged now, she would be taking stuff from the other people too to increase her pool of stuff to sell once the show's over. You could say this is a bit too risky for MK to do, but we do see that MK can get a bit overconfident at times, that predominantly being seen in both her eliminations in Season 1 and Season 2. Season 1, she used Julia's own insult on Julia, which was very risky, and you could say that she just forgot it was Julia's insult, but if that's the case, then that shows her inability to think everything she does through and would still work with this point. And in Season 2, falling predictably in Julia's trap by assuming it was so easy to get Julia to not target her. So considering everything went well for MK last episode, she would be confident on this high and steal stuff from the other team. Chase is outside the cabins being ecstatic about being back in a relationship with Emma, but instead of talking with Ripper and Z about this, he talks to MK since she was the one who helped them get back together. And MK would definitely remind him of that to keep his loyalty. Chase wouldn't be super thankful because he's naturally very egocentric, so he would believe that he did it all on his own, but he still does give some credit to MK, saying they make a good duo. Besides, her skills with electronics would be great for recording him. MK chuckles, saying maybe, but then has a confessional saying it took all of her willpower to not say she'd rather drown herself. Bowie leaves the cabin as MK talks to him, asking if he had a good night's rest, and Bowie responds saying he's surprised she cares, and she quickly admits she didn't, but she wanted to offer her deepest condolences on losing Raj because she knows that they were close. Bowie quickly asks how she knew, and MK, realizing she only knew from stalking the confessionals, quickly deflects, saying it was obvious, and she's just checking on their deal yesterday that Bowie would vote with her if she showed him the eggs. Bowie says those eggs weren't even near Chris and he didn't win, and MK responds saying that doesn't matter because the deal was just that she led him to some eggs, not that she'd ensure he'd win. Bowie grins as he says if they want to follow the exact wording of the deal, then he believes she said he has to vote with her today, as in yesterday when she said it, so he doesn't have to vote with her anymore, and walks off. Bowie is confessional saying he can't place his finger on it, but something is off with MK and he doesn't trust her. Besides, he's messing with Emma and that's Bowie's closest ally, so MK better start treading a bit more carefully. I think this suspicion by Bowie is also compounded by the fact that Bowie is someone pre-merged to not be a big fan of MK, as he's usually the one who called her out for being a bit of a slacker, plus him just also being a very good and socially aware player, makes him very suspicious of MK. The challenge would start, and like the original, MK would quit not wanting to eat the gross stuff, and Bowie would throw up in the first part, causing them both to get eliminated. Because MK is here with Chase and Emma, I think she would be able to stop Chase from accidentally revealing he wasn't apologizing to Emma about cutting her car's brakes, but I don't think she'd be there to stop it. Seeing as there was one meal between that and the first round where contestants had to eat pig noses plus snot, and I really don't think MK would be able to keep this down. The only reason the other competitors were able to do so is because they either felt they really needed invincibility, are naturally competitive, together as a couple, or just weird and like the food for some reason. But MK has none of those things going on for her, and since her strategy is to lay low, then not winning challenges is actually better for her, especially since she really doesn't need to win right now. So I'm pretty sure she'd barf here and get eliminated. Meaning she can't stop the fight between Chase and Emma, they both get eliminated in the next round, and they break up again. P would get eliminated in the next round as well like the original, leaving us with the final two of Ripper and Z. This final two is actually really tough to predict because both are very good at this challenge, with Z not being bothered by any of the meals that were brought out. And because Julia isn't here to gross him out with the milk, I think he'd be able to get past that round, as Ripper showed no awareness of Z being a threat in the challenge like Julia did, and given his less than impressive track record of his intelligence, I think it's fair to say he wouldn't sink to gross out Z. Not to mention that to initially sink to gross out Z with the milk, he would have had to catch on to the social cue that Julia did originally, that he was slightly disturbed by the milk's origins, which I definitely don't think Ripper would catch on to, since he has been shown to be smart sometimes, but he's definitely not been shown to be socially aware, so I don't think he'd be able to catch on with that. But even with all that said, I still think Ripper wins the challenge because we saw that Julia and Ripper ate a lot of food as the final two of the challenge, and near the end of the challenge being very out of it, not only because of the gross food, but also just being stuffed from eating a lot of food. And Z was never really trying in the challenge, and given his laid-back nature, I think he would just quit when he starts to get full, which given him asking for seconds near the beginning of the challenge and Ripper getting full from the amount, I think it's fair to say it would eventually happen before Ripper would tap out. leading him to quit before Ripper does. Z could be mad at Ripper from the last challenge, getting him set up with a deadly bird, and it was implied that he voted for Ripper in this elimination, but he also had a scene with Ripper at the beginning of the episode where he talked to Ripper seemingly completely fine with him. So that plus no mention or even confessional of him being mad with Ripper and his extremely laid back attitude, I don't really think he'd care enough to beat Ripper. So I think he just eventually quit. Even if he doesn't get full, I think by the time the tapeworm comes out, he'd definitely be out because he's weird, but like that's not even remotely in any way food. After the challenge, Chase would approach MK upset, seeing as how self-absorbed Chase is, and given that MK took credit for fixing his relationship with Emma, now that it's fallen apart, he would blame MK, saying her plan worked so well, because now Emma's even more mad than before, and he has no idea why. MK is truly insulted, asking what he did since she wasn't there for the cafeteria scene, and Chase explains Emma blew up at him because apparently he apologized for the wrong thing, and he would have never apologized to her at all if MK didn't lead them into the cave yesterday. MK pauses hearing all this and just adds, or if you just apologize for the prank, but Chase blows up again saying it was a prank and he will never apologize for that because it was funny, and walks off. MK has a confessional rubbing her head like she has a headache, saying she can't do this anymore and Chase is a complete lost cause, plus she's never been one to play Cupid, saying she's gonna have to look through today's confessionals to see if there's any more heat she can add to this flame to make sure he goes home. But when looking through the confessional, she watches Bowie's pre-challenge confessional about how he doesn't trust MK, and that throws her off since he's a really good player and she's worried that he's catching on to her. And this creates a difficult situation to figure out with MK, of finding out who she would want to get rid of more between Chase and Bowie. It's really tough since Bowie has had many confessionals gloating about his skills and moves, so MK would definitely view him as a threat, but Chase is just near impossible for MK to work with. You could say that Bowie not trusting her makes him worse for her to keep around, but Chase is also mad at MK, and instead of Bowie who was just suspicious of her, Chase is firmly against her. And since MK's strategy revolves a lot around hiding behind the bigger threats, then I think she would realize that getting Bowie, a big threat, on her side is better than getting rid of him right now. MK would butt in on a conversation between Bowie and Emma, trying to speak with them about the vote. Bowie is still hesitant to speak with MK, but Emma quickly tells MK that Chase has to go, and MK fully agrees. This surprises Bowie since his impression of MK was that she was trying to get Chase back with Emma, but seeing her willing to vote him out makes Bowie pleased. For the vote, obviously Emma, Bowie, and MK vote for Chase. Chase votes MK out of spite, and everyone else is a bit hard to tell since most of them voted for Ripper in the original, but he's not an option anymore. Priya probably still ends up voting Millie to attempt to scare her into trying in challenges. Ripper is tough, but considering in the original he voted for Millie, I have no reason to believe that would change here. He could also think that MK started stealing his stuff to get back at him for literally all of pre-merge, but mainly the time when he stole her pillow. Millie is also a hard read, but given the exact circumstances of her things being stolen, I think being as smart as she is would realize no one on her team did it since it doesn't match any of them. Z is too chill, Chase has been too busy with Emma, Priya is her best friend, so Millie wouldn't think that she could do it, and Ripper does match it well, but I imagine he's been the most vocal about missing his stuff because he's such a loudmouth, so it wouldn't make sense for him to steal his own stuff. Also, Millie would doubt that he could pull it off without getting caught. And because none of this was an issue before the merge, Millie would know it's most likely someone on the other team who's been stealing their stuff. Now, Millie really hasn't had a chance to talk to anyone on the other team or even examine them as she spent most of her time with Priya and they've only been merged for 2 episodes, so Millie could be voting for pretty much anyone on the other team. I mean, Emma is probably safe because Millie would think she's been too busy with Chase. Also, Emma getting back with Chase would prove to Millie that she's too dumb to pull it off. It's between Bowie or MK, both of which feel pretty likely, but it doesn't really matter who she votes for either way because it doesn't give them the majority, so let's just say she voted for MK so we can move on. Z, I have no idea. As we see in the next episode, he has an incredibly hard time voting against someone as he's cool with everyone, and this is kind of a stretch I'm going for because it didn't seem to bother him in the original, but I think he would vote Emma or Chase for them enticing and challenging each other to throw up the food because he feels like they insulted Chef, which would make him unhappy because he genuinely enjoyed the food and he doesn't like them insulting the cooking. Between the two choices, it really doesn't matter because either way it doesn't give the majority for either of them to go home, but I'm going with Chase because he was more aggressive about making Emma throw up. I mean, it could be Emma because he's closer to Chase, but whatever, I'm not going to think about this much more because it doesn't even affect the vote. So in a, I guess, 4-2-2 vote, or, you know, Z throws his vote on Emma, 3-2-2-1 vote, either way, Chase is eliminated. Chase would definitely cause a bit more of a scene to the elimination than the original, because he originally had Pizza and Emma, so he was pretty content in leaving, but now with neither of those, he would be annoyed at getting voted off. MK would taunt him as he gets pulled away by Chef, but this would backfire with Chase telling her that she's the worst Cupid ever, making Emma look directly at MK annoyed, realizing she was helping Chase try to get back with her, and Bowie does the same to MK. The episode would start with Millie and Priya training in the cabins, as Millie gets freaked out from receiving votes last night. Once she gets hit in the head and wants to stop training, she starts to give up a little, wondering how she could have possibly possibly gotten votes from anyone. And at this moment, Ripper would have been walking past the cabin, and Growl, hearing this statement, breaking in to tell Millie that he voted for her because he knows that she's the one stealing stuff from him. Priya tells Ripper off for accusing her of that, as Millie defends herself too, saying that is complete nonsense, and the stealing only started happening once they merged, making Millie reveal her theory that one of the people from the other team was stealing their stuff. Ripper, being ignorant as he is and not wanting to work with the nerds, continues to accuse Millie, saying she must have done it as payback and jealousy from how cool he is to her. This makes Millie and Priya laugh as they continue firing back and forth at him about how she couldn't have done it, eventually making Ripper realize his error and even lightly apologizing for voting her. Millie says it's nice to at least know who voted for her, if only she could figure out who the other vote was, before Priya butts in, cutting Millie off, and suggests they work together in an alliance as their old team till they catch the thief. Ripper agrees because he wants the thief to be caught so he can suplex them, but like the original of Priya inviting Julia to the alliance, Millie disagrees, asking to talk with Priya privately, and like the original, Priya has the same reasoning that if the other people were to target anyone in the alliance, Ripper is the most likely option because of how unlikely he is, meaning they become more safe. And this eventually makes Millie agree. And the trio would also grab Z to add to their alliance, and it makes even more sense because he's already part of their old team. And the scene of them getting Z to join their alliance plays out the same as the original of them hiding in the bush, and Z quickly agreeing. Bowie, like the original, would notice the Free talking to Z, and tells his own alliance of Emma that they're in danger, and they need to recruit MK and Z to have the numbers. Because even though he doesn't trust MK, he really wants to have the numbers, otherwise, they're kinda screwed. Emma would be hesitant to bring in MK because she's still mad at MK for getting involved in her love life, but because Bowie was able to convince Emma of bringing Chase into the alliance despite her hate for him, I'm pretty sure he can convince her to work with MK, leading to the two of them talking with MK, saying they're willing to still work with her after what she did, making MK say all shucks and they're about to make her blush with how nice they're being, making Bowie tell her to shush and saying they still have to go recruit Z, and like the original of them recruiting Z, it still plays out the same. They bring him to a bush, he quickly agrees, they're surprised, yeah, it's all the same. Chris would explain the challenge to the competitors, and the challenge would begin. Priya and Millie would still have their scene with Priya explaining the signs of Chris lying. The only difference is that Ripper would be here for the talk too, at first agreeing with Millie about how nice and easy the challenge is going to be, but then quickly switching ships once Priya starts explaining why Chris is lying. Kind of playing the stereotypical bully meathead friend, adding unnecessary repeat comments towards Millie to make it seem like he understands. Priya calls Ripper out on it after she finishes explaining, asking if he even processed what she said, and Ripper has a blank expression on his face. Ripper has a confessional brushing Priya aside, saying as if he's going to listen to a nerd, and even though they're in an alliance, he still doesn't fully trust them, so he's going to take advantage of the easy challenge they have today, and make it way ahead of everyone and win the challenge. Even gloating as he says everyone gets to finally see what it looks like when he's using all of his brain, before realizing he implied that he wasn't using all of his brain before, causing him to backtrack but get lost in the train of thought, leading to the confessional ending abruptly before he can correct himself. Cut back to the challenge where Ripper blows off Priya's question, saying he's done chatting and he's going to go ahead and win the challenge now, while speeding ahead of them. Priya tries to stop to warn him about the challenge being dangerous, but Millie stops her, saying he won't listen. Besides, a break from him would be nice, as Priya chuckles and agrees. Ripper in result ends up paying the price similar to Julia original as he flies ahead, but ends up getting overwhelmed with the amount of fishes that jump out of the water to hit him in the face, making him fall behind in the challenge as Emma takes the lead. Because Chase isn't here to offer to cover one of Emma's sides, I now see MK doing it, since she's aware that Emma isn't on the best terms with her, and now that they're in an alliance, MK would want to smooth that over. So like Chase, MK offers to cover Emma's other side, and Emma reluctantly agrees, saying it's a good idea. Now, I don't see MK being the best at hitting the fish away. She hasn't shown to be bad at challenges necessarily, but she's definitely not very physically strong, and I think the number of fish will start to overwhelm her as some get past her and hit Emma, making Emma more angry at MK. MK tries to apologize as more fish keep hitting her, causing Emma to blow up at MK as she talks increasingly about how it's unspoken that she keeps the fish away, that she doesn't interfere with her boat, and she just lets her do her own thing instead of getting involved in its love life, and it's obvious that she's talking more about Chase than the boat. MK groans at Emma's attempts to cloak her aggressions about the Chase situation still, and as we see with Emma in the show, when it comes to Chase, she can have a very short fuse, so hearing MK disrespect her like this would make Emma jump onto MK's boat as they start to brawl. Before Emma can land a punch, a bear lifts up their boat and throws them to the shoreline, and they both get surrounded by bears. Originally, Emma and Chase got out of this by Chase suggesting they fake die so the bears will leave them alone, but since he isn't here, they wouldn't do that anymore. Instead, I think MK would notice Z with a fish in his hands and tells Z to throw it their way to distract the bears, and Z does so because they're an alliance and he's a nice guy, allowing MK and Emma to sneak away. And this would allow the same scene of Priya seeing Z help the others outside of their alliance, and having confessional praising of Z for being so smart by helping the other team to give them a false sense of security. Ripper again would have a similar scene to Julia getting attacked by bears on his boat, with him then having a confessional saying he's starting to think that Chris might have been lying to them when he said this was an easy challenge. Bowie originally had a plan with Julia to follow closely behind her, letting her take on all the obstacles, and then swoop in last minute to ring the bell and win, and because Ripper is dumber, louder, and just in general a bigger target for any threat that comes, I think Bowie would now use this plan on Ripper, staying a little behind him at all times. MK and Emma would be sharing a canoe together, as MK tries to apologize for interfering in her love life, but Emma keeps shushing her. MK is shocked at the rudeness because MK is actually trying to be nice, but eventually MK shuts up as they both hear the oncoming waterfall, which they and the entire cast fall down. And again, like Julia originally, Ripper would provoke the crocodiles trying to pass them the win, but just ends up becoming their punching bags as everyone else continues in the challenge. The geysers end up playing out pretty similar to the original. They would go slow at first by Priya's suggestion, but once Z suggests they quote, run faster so the water can't hit them, Ripper would start running insisting they have to go, and also, doesn't want to listen to nerds, so he'll take that chance. This causes the Priya, Millie, and Ripper alliance all to crash, getting shot at by the geysers, as Bowie has a scene from the original praising Z for being a genius by giving them bad advice. This also allows Bowie to get the early lead up to the volcano. Pretty similar stuff from the original plays out now, Ripper mostly taking over Julia's spot in the original, getting punching bag treatment of getting stung by the bees everywhere but continuing to persist, and then stop Bowie from winning at the top when they break out into a fight. MK, unlike Chase, I see being able to get through the geysers since she's definitely smart enough to just avoid the wet spots, meaning she's with Emma and go with her through the high shortcut that Emma wanted to go through originally. It's not too eventful in there, but now that she actually has the time, MK would formally apologize to Emma for getting involved in her love life. Emma would want to know why she did, and MK would obviously not want to reveal the real reason, that she wanted to manipulate both of them, and instead just lies and says she felt bad for him because he really wanted to get back with her, but she can now see how wrong it was for her to get involved, especially since he's literally the worst. Emma, feeling MK is being genuine about the apology, accepts it and tells her they're all good now, as long as she doesn't get involved anymore in her relationships. And MK replies of course, but then in confessionals says while rotating her hand, showing uncertainty. Bowie and Ripper's fight plays out the same, except I imagine that Ripper would definitely have the upper hand now. Even though he's injured from all the bee stings, he just has a much wider build than Bowie. But they would both still end up falling into the mini pool of honey that Z pulls them out of when he uses both his hands like the original. And when they both get out, I again see Ripper having the upper hand, throwing Bowie into the volcano, honey, and ringing the bell for the invincibility. And because it also feels very in line for his character, he would celebrate and fall off the top like Julia, suffering more damage, and then having a confessional cockily saying too easy while splitting one of his teeth out and smiling. The lead into the vote doesn't have much to talk about as everyone is already under the impression that they're in the majority alliance. The only person that would do things is MK since she has access to the confessionals and would have seen Z's and see he's not very bright. Which I don't think would be a surprise to her, but it does worry her that he hasn't chosen a side yet. And Z never said the extent of his plan to vote out Chris in the confessionals. He only ever said his plan was to save everyone. And I really don't think MK would trust that to go off of, especially since Millie and in turn the other three-person alliance is targeting MK because they think she's the one behind the stealing because Millie would have told them that that's her theory. So MK would want an extra safety blanket by breaking their votes up. Now I don't think she would show Priya what's in Millie's notebook yet because I'm saving that for later because I think it makes a lot more sense for why she doesn't show it now if you know why she does it later, so you're just gonna have to trust me that when I explain it later it makes more sense. Besides, if MK were to show that, then Millie would probably be voted out, and she isn't really a physical threat, probably a strategic threat because she's catching on to MK, but again, I'll explain more later. However, I do think with the knowledge that Priya voted for Millie last round because Priya admitted that in confessional last round because she thought she voted out her friend, and because I was in confessional, MK would have it. MK would sneak into the girls' cabin and hide an anonymous note in Millie's bed, telling Millie that Priya voted for her last round. Millie reads it and laughs it off, thinking it's some sort of joke, but once she shows it to Priya, she buckles under the guilt and admits to Millie she did it, and explains she was just upset that she wasn't trying in the challenges, and she was just trying to give her an extra edge. And I really have no way of knowing exactly how Millie would take this, as she's never really been put in any sort of situation of betrayal like this. I don't see Millie as the angry type, she just doesn't seem like she has that much aggression in her. I mean, just look at how much abuse and bullying she was willing to take from Ripper without breaking. I think Millie would just be distraught that her friend would do that to her, and walk away from Priya without saying a word and a sad look on her face. And at the elimination ceremony, Millie would remain distant from Priya, as MK smirks while watching it. Ripper gets in MK's face, asking her what she thinks is so funny, prompting MK to make fun of him, asking if he's talking to her because his eyes are too swollen for her to be able to tell. Ripper would be insulted by this and tell her his battle scars are a show of his extreme effort, and MK would respond under her breath saying more like a show of his extreme stupidity. And before the vote can happen, Z would still be Z and reveal his mastermind plan to vote out Chris that instantly makes everybody vote him out on the revote. Pre-challenge Priya would still go on her morning training run, but without Millie because I imagine Millie probably would have said no to the offer. Like I said last episode, I don't have an exact idea of how Millie would react to this type of situation with Priya, because we've never seen her face a situation like this, but I do imagine Millie would just want time to process it, as she's starting to enjoy Priya as a friend, but hearing Priya voted for her obviously hurts, so she just needs some time away from Priya to process how she feels. And even though Millie isn't there to drink all of Priya's water, I still think Priya would get dehydrated, as I feel she would forget the water bottle due to the turmoil with Millie. This is very out of character for Priya to not be prepared for training, but keep in mind it's deeply implied that Millie is Priya's only friend, so I think it's fair to say this to be enough to frazzle her to forget to bring her water bottle. Ripper would be seen up in the morning talking to Millie, who seems deep in thought. He eventually mentions Priya and their alliance, but Millie just gives an uncertain saying she's not sure if that's still going, making Ripper raise an eyebrow. Ripper has a confessional saying with just girls and Bowie, he's the only real man left, which will undoubtedly make his win streak continue. But socially, he needs his alliance to stay together, so he has to get in touch with his feminine energy to fix their girl fight, which Ripper claims to be an expert at, saying communicating with girls is all about forcefully trying to insert and fix the problem yourself. Ripper then probes Millie in conversation to try and talk about what's going on with her and Priya, but anytime Millie tries to talk about it, he quickly interjects with dumb solutions, not understanding the complexity of the situation, and Millie quickly huffs off annoyed, realizing he's barely even paying attention. Ripper has a confessional asking if the audience heard that, saying that's the classic female huff of approval he always gets, and brags saying he's too good at this. The cast would go outside to the dining hall where Chef reveals no one gets breakfast for the challenge, and Chris would begin the challenge. Priya would try talking to Millie during the challenge, but due to her dehydration and starvation, she's too loopy to formulate her sentence well, and Millie just tells her it's not the best time to talk and they should just focus on the challenge. Ripper gets annoyed watching this, as this wasn't his advice, so he leans over to Millie's pole, whispering and asking her what she's doing. Millie says just trying to not fall off the pole, while Ripper tells her to talk with Priya and fix their friendship, making Millie more annoyed, telling Ripper to quit it, and she's gonna leave the next temptation anyways. Besides, Priya doesn't seem best fit for discussion right now, noting Priya's crazed state. Ripper has a confessional annoyed by Millie's avoidant nature to this conflict, saying girls have never been this difficult with drama, and he's going to need to think of something else to keep this alliance together, and quickly, as he holds his hands to his chin, grunting to think of a plan, and just ends up farting instead. At the next temptation, Millie is about to offer to step down, but Ripper beats her to it, taking the offer. I imagine he does this because the lack of food I definitely imagine would be getting to him, as he just seems like someone who runs on food as his fuel. So he would already have been struggling and thinking he probably can't win, but the much bigger reason is because he knew if he took the temptation then Millie wouldn't, because then she'd have to share it, which isn't optimal if you're gonna step down, in turn making Millie forced to stay up there longer with Priya, giving them the chance to make up. Priya would have noticed Millie almost taking the temptation, questioning Millie on it, as Millie admits she was about to step down, but Priya begs her not to, telling Millie she can do this, and she just has to try and stay up. Millie is unsure but does feel a bit motivated hearing Priya's encouragement, so decides to try and stay for as long as she can. Emma would still be having her increase in anger from lack of food, but MK would be chatting with her relating to Emma, and having a natural conversation with her that Emma enjoys, chuckling a bit as well. In a confessional, MK reveals that Emma tends to ramble in the confessional booth. I see this because Emma definitely seems like someone who would do that, and even at times does ramble with Bowie and other people she's talking to, so MK reveals that she studied all of her ramblings last night in the confessional booth, which were long, dramatic, and boring, but now MK knows everything about Emma's likes and interests, so befriending her will be a breeze now. Bowie watches MK and Emma laughing, and has a confessional not liking what he's seeing, because Emma is supposed to be his number one, and he sees exactly what game MK is trying to play at, but it's not a matter because he's better at the social play, and she's gonna get put in her place by moi. Priya also watches MK and Emma interacting, and sighs seeing how well they're getting along, and thinks about how they're talking about their interests, and like the original realizes she doesn't know anything about Millie, and then asks Millie if she can read her notebook, which Millie hesitates on as people pressure her. Yeah, it's all like the original. Because the Julia and MK stuff didn't play out with Julia revealing MK was stalking the confessionals with her phone, Julia's phone wouldn't be on the beach now for Bowie to spot and then eliminate himself to get, meaning he would stay in the challenge. And instead this scene is replaced with him interjecting in MK and Emma's conversation, and casually reminding Emma of MK trying to get her back with Chase, and because of Emma's increased anger by the hunger and the topic of Chase, she would be extremely mad towards MK. MK tries to rebuttal, but Emma starts swinging her fist, telling MK to back off, causing MK to glare at Bowie, who's grinning at her. When Chris offers the next temptation of $10,000, MK would jump off, obviously because money, but also because she would have a confessional annoyed at Bowie getting involved with her and Emma, saying as long as he's in the game she won't be able to make Emma completely loyal to her, so Bowie has overstayed his welcome on the show, and he better hopes he wins today because she has a plan to get rid of him. Priya would still fall into her delirious, dehydrated state. I actually see Ripper coming over with her water bottle now to try and give it to her, since he wants her to clear her head to talk with Millie, but because Priya at this point has started hallucinating water bottle as an enemy, she would immediately jump onto Ripper from her pole to attack the water bottle, meaning she would be eliminated from the challenge. From here I really can't tell what would happen, as there's no more reasons I can think of why these final three would jump off. Millie definitely is resistant to doing challenges, but originally she's stuck in this challenge, and with Priya's encouragement, I think she would continue to hold on. Besides, the longer she stays up there, the longer she can avoid talking to Priya about the notebook and the vote, so yeah. Emma is tough, but she was really out of it at this point, trying to punch everything, and she originally almost slipped and didn't fall because the challenge ended before she could. Her almost falling was a result of Chase, who isn't here now, but given her clearly delirious state, I think she'd eventually swing a punch at a mosquito or something, and end up losing her balance and fall off, leaving it between Bowie and Millie. And even though I do think Bowie would be doing very good, I think Millie actually beats him out here for a couple of reasons. One, with the support of Priya, I feel she would be more determined to win than Bowie, especially since she thinks this is the closest she'll ever be to winning a challenge because she's not very good at other challenges, so she'd want to win this challenge because it's something she's actually capable of. And 2, with the support of Ripper and Pia, who I imagine would have come back from the challenge to cheer her on after getting Pia hydrated and Ripper's injuries from Pia dealt with, Millie would have a more supportive edge, because I don't think Bowie would have any support from anyone since Emma was just up there with him and obviously needs time to satisfy her hunger and recover, and MK just obviously wouldn't be there to help Bowie because she doesn't like him. So even though I think Bowie would be able to last a couple hours longer, eventually he would fall and Millie would win invincibility. Millie jumps off the pole excited from winning invincibility, as Pia gives Millie a hug before backing out, unsure if Millie's still mad at her, but Millie pulls her back in and thanks Pia for pushing her. Millie has a confessional saying she gets why Pia voted for her for not trying in the challenges, and even though it's difficult to agree with the reasoning, she forgives Pia. Plus, being reminded of what she's been writing about Pia in her notebook made her realize she's not such a great friend herself, and she's going to start being better and writing good things about her friend from now on. Ripper watches the two hugging and starts to tear up a bit, pulling both of them in for a bear hug of his own, as Millie and Pia look at each other highly confused. Ripper has a confessional saying he learned today that Pia and Millie aren't as bad as he used to think. Pia proved that she can fight, and Millie's the only other person to win 2 challenges like himself, so he can get used to being best friends with them. Besides, they desperately need him because he's the glue that holds them together. I imagine this happens with Ripper mainly because of the next season where he ends up falling in love with Axel due to her beating him up. Ripper is a complicated man to say the least. It's hard to tell how he really gains respect for people, but I do think Pia beating him up and Millie winning multiple challenges would show him that they're definitely more like him than he originally thought. I definitely don't think this is enough for him to fall in love with Pia like he did with Axel, because Axel had to beat him up multiple times, and also Ripper has I don't know exactly what you'd call it, I guess like an internalized hate for nerds, and Pia definitely is still a nerd, but what he saw today would make him respect them just a tiny bit. Also, getting to bring them back together would increase his ego as he believes he's an essential part of their friendship now, therefore creating an internalized obligation in him to stay friends with them because, you know, he's helping them out. Millie, Pia, and Ripper would all be talking together as they head back to the cabins. Ripper joyfully walks off, excited to see them at the elimination ceremony, as Pia asks Millie, now being alone, what's going on with Ripper, to which Millie shrugs and says she doesn't know, but they should enjoy it before he becomes rude again, making Pia giggle as she walks into the cabin. Millie's about to follow, but before she can, MK would knock on the wall behind her, making Millie churn as MK says hi to Millie. Millie, still thinking MK is behind the stealing of her team's stuff, has an apprehensive tone asking what MK wants, and MK smirks saying she thinks it's more about what Millie wants, as she reveals Millie's notebook from her pocket. Millie gasps as MK says there's a lot of juicy stuff in here, especially about her self-proclaimed friend. Millie tells MK to quiet down as she doesn't want Pia to hear, and MK says she's more than happy to keep Millie's secret, as long as she helps MK out a bit. Millie slouches over upset, but having no choice asks what she had in mind. I imagine MK would have gone for this approach because if you look at the final 6, the other 4 competitors are all arguably very good at challenges, and MK would realize she doesn't really stand a chance against any of them in the finale, but Millie has shown to be just as bad, if not worse than MK in challenges, meaning MK would definitely think her best shot at winning is going to the end with Millie, which is why she uses Millie's notebook as blackmail against Millie instead of using it to get Millie eliminated. Even though Millie's shown to be suspicious of MK, it still works in MK's favor to blackmail her, especially since she really wants Bowie gone, someone who's also suspicious of MK and is a much bigger threat. He's a threat in challenges, he's a threat socially, and as I said earlier, as long as he's in the game, he's always going to get in between her and Emma, making it impossible for her to form a strong connection with Emma, so Bowie really has to go in MK's eyes. To get Bowie eliminated, MK would use Millie to reveal the stolen stuff from her team under Bowie's bed covers to the entire cast. Ripper and Pia get understandably upset at Bowie, since Millie is a reliable source to both of them. Bowie fumbles to defend himself, as even though he's a very good talker, this would definitely throw him off, as he didn't even know about the stolen stuff till right now. Bowie tries to get Emma to defend him, and I do think Emma would take his side because he's her friend, but when Ripper and Pia ask her to explain how they found their stuff underneath Bowie's covers, she struggles to meaningly defend him, weakly saying the wind might have flown it there, making Bowie facepalm. Chris announces for the cast to go to the vote, and Ripper smirks saying this is going to be a satisfying vote, with Pia agreeing, but Millie looking off guilty as she passes a defeated Bowie. MK approaches Bowie, and similar to Julia originally when they were heading to the elimination ceremony, she taunts him saying at least you get to reunite with your boyfriend, and hearing this comment, Bowie has a confessional, connecting the dots of his team stuff being stolen during Julia's elimination episode, and they assumed it was Julia stealing their stuff, but since stuff is still being stolen after the merge, it couldn't have been her. And he knows him and Emma didn't do it, meaning MK is the only option. So he quickly runs out of the confessional booth into the elimination ceremony, where he tries to plead to the cast that MK was the one who stole their stuff, telling them his story of how stuff was being stolen before, and MK is just trying to frame him. Emma is shocked, asking MK if that's true, to which MK obviously denies, saying he's just trying to save himself. Pia and Ripper now seem a bit unsure, as Bowie's reasoning makes sense, and Pia previously accused MK for stealing the stuff, but Millie interjects saying she was wrong and she now knows it's Bowie. Pia asks if she's sure, and Millie takes one last glance at MK, telling Pia she's sure. MK asks Bowie if he's done now, if he wants to take a seat, and Bowie, realizing his defeat with no way to convince the others that he's innocent, takes a seat as the vote comes in with him being eliminated. eliminated. I do think Emma wouldn't have voted for Bowie, but with Priya, Ripper, Millie, and MK all voting for Bowie, it's still the majority, and he's still eliminated. The episode would begin with Priya and Millie still exchanging friendship bracelets, but now Ripper rejoined them as he asks where his friendship bracelet is. They both awkwardly chuckle, not knowing how to answer his question, as to them they obviously haven't considered him this close, but Ripper takes initiative and says he'll make his own bracelet and get back to them. Priya asks Millie what she thinks about this Ripper situation, and Millie is extremely supportive, saying he's a good number to add. Priya is shocked that she still doesn't really like him for everything he did to them pre-merge, but Millie says with him they keep the majority vote. Besides, he's also a good challenge competitor, so odds are he might win again today, so it's better to have him on their side. Priya chuckles, saying Millie shouldn't count herself out yet, as her challenge wins match his, so she might give him a run for his money. Millie chuckles as she has a confessional, saying the truth is she isn't big on Ripper either, but she really needs the three of them to stick together because the sooner they get rid of MK, the sooner she can stop worrying about her secret getting out. Emma sighs while playing with her food as MK cheerfully walks up to her, asking why she's so glum. And Emma says she's still having a hard time with the Bowie situation, saying she really thought they were good friends and it's hard to imagine that he wasn't a good person. MK reminds Emma that she also thought Chase was a good boyfriend once, and that as her friend, MK feels that she should tell her that maybe she just doesn't have that good of a read on men. And Emma sighs again, saying she guesses MK's right, but MK tells her to cheer up because they're in the final 5, and seeing as there's only one guy left that is less than favorable, they should have an easier way into the final 4. Emma is doubtful, saying she's seen Ripper with the other girls and they seem to be getting along, but MK asks if they're talking about the same guy because he's intolerable, and she can only imagine they're tired of him at this point. Besides, with the opportunity of an all-female final 4, MK is sure she can convince them. MK then has a confessional with a smirk, saying convince, blackmail, potato to me. Chris would explain the challenge, and as usual, not much changes, but I do imagine when Chef explains that you have to be in the shot itself, MK would snap her fingers in annoyance, since I definitely could have seen her initially planning to hack the cameras around the island or something, but having to be in the shot ruins that plan. Once the challenge begins, Priya and Millie would still get to the lines first, with Ripper coming up shortly after, loudly bragging about the friendship bracelet he made as he shows the crudely made bracelet out of twigs on his wrist. He continues bragging about how he made it, with Priya and Millie trying to shush him to not alert the lions, until Priya accidentally goes a bit too loud with a shush, making a lion yawn and letting Ripper know about the lions, but instead he blames Priya, telling her to quiet down. Priya rolls her eyes while Millie gets them back on track, telling them to quickly take selfies. Priya quietly applauds Millie for finally being so challenge-oriented, saying it's really nice to see her taking charge. Millie is thankful, but tells her now isn't the time and they should really take a picture of the... But before she can finish her statement, she gets cut off by a rock being thrown at a lion from their direction by MK, as she and Emma hide back in a bush, as the lions all wake up and chase Priya, Millie, and Ripper up a tree. MK and Emma snicker in the bush as they both quickly take selfies of the lions clawing at the bottom of the tree, before continuing the challenge. This leads to a similar scene of Bowie and Emma originally, just MK and Emma as they run off, and MK talks about how they should go for lower point animals because they aren't as dangerous. And they go off to the dumpster where Emma gets swarmed by the raccoons but manages to get a selfie with them, but not before they also knock into MK. This prompts MK to have a confessional, saying taking photos of dangerous wildlife really doesn't suit her, and she has a in thought, realizing that if someone were to lose their phone then they wouldn't be able to complete the challenge because they couldn't take any more selfies, giving her a sinister grin. MK does a quick congratulation on Emma getting the selfie, before saying Emma should keep her lead going and try to win the challenge. And MK is going to go try and convince the girls to vote out Ripper, and Emma agrees with going to go take more photos. Ripper, Millie, and Priya would still be stuck in the tree from the lions below, but they all do get selfies with the lions, keeping them tied with MK. But they have no way down. However, Julia originally bored the lions with her excessive preaching about how they should work together as an alliance, and I could see a very similar thing happening just replacing Ripper with Julia, as he talks excessively about their alliance. Imagine with him just trying to name the alliance because that seems like something he'd want to do. Probably something along the lines of like the Alpha Pack or Team Ripper, both of which Millie and Priya reject with ease, making Ripper huffy, saying they might as well call themselves the Triple Trio then if they don't want to add any personality to it. And in this moment, Millie praises Ripper for being a genius and boring the lions, as they all scale down the tree. But Ripper is confused, thinking that Millie was praising him for the alliance name, and having a confessional saying he thought the Triple Trio was a lame, but apparently they like the name so he'll keep it for them, ironically commenting on the sacrifices he has to make with their personalities. Emma would still end up going to the dangerous Canadian Goose, now just by herself, and since she isn't there with Bowie, they wouldn't get into a fight and stay there super long. However, once the Canadian Goose starts circling her, I really don't see a way she'd be able to get out of that situation unharmed, as I don't imagine it would just let her leave without attacking, and I don't think she's smart enough to come up with a plan, nor is there much she could even really do, so she would try backing out of the area, talking to the goose like a dog, and think she got away when she makes distance from the egg, but the second she turns her back to walk away, the goose grabs her and lifts her into the air, much like it did with Bowie originally. The Priya Millie scene with the crocodile would play out the same, if Priya going near the water and the crocodile unexpectedly jumping out and pulling her in. Then Millie follows in after to save her using the friendship bracelet to tie it around the crocodile's jaw. Ripper would be standing on the shore of the water, giving advice to Millie as she fights a crocodile, which is more or less completely useless, as he's just listing off wrestling moves to inflict on the alligator. However, while Ripper is standing on the shore distracted by Millie fighting the croc, MK would sneak up behind him and using her extensive background in pickpocketing, steal Ripper's phone and walks off. I did consider if she would also take Millie and Priya's phones, as they both leave their phones unprotected at the shore, but I think that MK would view that as too risky because they would notice and that would cause Ripper and Priya to rethink that MK was the thief. Or if Emma heard about that, she might not trust MK as much because, this entire scandal of Bowie is that he's a thief. So to then hear that MK stole stuff from them isn't a good look. Besides, MK only needs to ensure that Ripper doesn't win so he can get voted out, but if Priya or Millie wins it, it doesn't really matter that much. Also, Priya would still end up snapping a photo of herself with the croc before going in, meaning she gets 8 more points and holds the lead. Emma would continue to have a similar scene to Bowie being thrown by the goose near all the high point animals, but they all run away before she can get a photo of them because the goose scares them away and then attacks Emma again. Ripper, Priya, and Millie still find the tail of a rabbit in a bush, so plan to scare it out and take the photo, and Ripper gladly offers to scare it out, saying that his mom has said his face is terrifying before. But once Ripper jumps on it and tries to scare it out, it stands to reveal itself as a bear, causing Ripper to get repeatedly slammed on the ground by it, much like Priya was originally. Millie and Priya are eventually able to get the bear to stop, but not before it slams Ripper a good amount of times, hurting him, and Millie still has to put her phone in the bear's jaw to get away, in result damaging her phone. Once the three run away and hide in a bush, Priya asks Millie where her phone is, and she admits that it got destroyed by the bear. Priya is appreciative of Millie sacrificing her chance to win to save Ripper, as does the extremely dazed Ripper, saying the dumb two-headed bear was no match for the triple trio. Priya and Millie ignore his comment, but Millie says they should check his pocket to see if his phone survived, but they fail to find the phone in his pocket and instead just get grossed out by his pockets with how dirty they are. They ask Ripper when he last saw his phone, and he answers by the big wet zone, and Millie realizes that he must have left his phone by the lake, and says she'll head back to check, and Priya should watch Ripper and continue getting points. Millie heads back to the lake trying to look for Ripper's phone, but before she can head back to her team, MK greets her saying it's nice to catch up, bestie. Millie says they aren't best friends, and MK chuckles saying clearly the position wasn't fulfilled, obviously talking about Priya. Millie asks what she wants, and MK says not much, she just wants her vote for Ripper today. Millie says no way since Millie already held up her end of the deal yesterday, convincing everyone Bowie was the one stealing stuff, and MK replies, huh? That's so weird because she still has Millie's secret and the notebook, so unless she wants to try to vote at someone else and have MK show it to Priya, then she best fix her tone, turn that frown upside down, and get Ripper voted off. And with that, MK walks away. Millie has a confessional saying she was dumb to think it would be so easy to get MK off her back. She can't let Priya know that she was using her at the beginning, especially since they're just starting to be friends. Millie justifies this choice to herself by reminding herself of how awful Ripper was, and says it's not the worst thing in the world if she betrays him. But Millie groans, doubting if she can vote against Priya like that, saying she has to inform Priya of her vote, and hopefully she can get Priya to agree with her, otherwise it's going to be difficult for her to follow through. Millie heads back to Priya and Ripper behind the bush, with Priya asking if she found Ripper's phone. And Millie says no dice. Ripper at this point looks better, and even though he's a little upset he lost his phone, he takes it in stride saying they have to make sure Priya wins then, since she's their last hope, with him running off to help her find animals with the other two following suit. Priya has a confessional saying she was doubtful of Ripper before, but Millie was right and he's really turned his attitude around, and she's glad to have him in their alliance. Emma, like Bowie, still runs to the cabin and closes the door with the goose hiding behind her, but unlike Bowie who tried to plead with the goose, Emma with her history of anger control freaks out on the goose, indirectly comparing it to Chase, calling it clingy and annoying and saying it should really get a life. Then she moves her arm around its shoulder and tells it to stay still for the photo, which the goose does for a second with confusion from her display, allowing Emma to get a selfie. Once the photo ends, the goose tries to attack her again, but luckily Emma is able to get out the door and close it behind her, allowing her to escape the goose. Now I do feel like it's possible that the goose becomes docile from the comments, seeing as it looks pretty lonely from its location, sad swamp, the looks of it no other of its kind, but seeing just how overly aggressive it was with Bowie, I was pretty torn on deciding if it could become docile from this comment. So I decided to go with this path of it trying to attack her but Emma still getting away, as its results fall in between of it still being mad and it becoming nice, as if it became nice it would possibly help Emma to make it up to her, and if it remained mean then it would attack Emma. So this is the path of her escaping the attack but also not befriending it, so it seemed like the safest option to follow. I have no way of really knowing how many points Priya would get during this time. I do imagine it's a fair amount given that Ripper and Millie are helping her get animals, and that they don't have to go for big point animals since all three of them can just collect the small point but more safe animals since they're funneling all their points to one phone. But it's also important to note that the goose Emma got a photo with was worth 12 points. So looking at it like that, I think Priya would probably have gotten somewhere around 18 more points during Emma's scene, giving her a score of 36 combined with the 18 points from earlier. And then Emma's 13 from earlier plus the 12 from the goose, giving her a combined of 25. So Chris would again inform the competitors over the intercom of the 15-point turtle that Emma could win if she got a photo with, making Priya, Millie, and Ripper also go to the turtle to get the photo with, because if Priya gets a photo with it, then she would still win as she currently holds the lead. This scene of the team getting beat up by the turtle plays out the same, just with the turtle being even more dominant, fighting 4 people at once, but seeing that Priya has 2 other people to help her, I do think she'd be able to get the photo, meaning Priya wins invincibility. Not that this is really important, but I do imagine there'd be a scene of MK heading back to the cabins during the challenge, since she wasn't really trying to win and wouldn't have to go to the turtle, because I don't think she has enough points that it would matter if she got a photo of the turtle or not. But when she opens the door to the cabin, the goose that Emma locked in earlier attacks her, leading to MK having a confessional with a black eye saying there's officially a no goose in cabins rule she's enforcing, even showing a little sign she made with a goose crossed out. Priya is excited that she won her first challenge as she celebrates with Millie and Ripper, as they all agree to a vote. Doesn't really matter who, but let's just say Emma because she proved to be a bigger threat in the challenge. Once they start to walk away, Millie pulls on Priya's arm saying she has to talk with her. Priya asks what's up, as Millie says she thinks they should vote off Ripper. Priya is extremely confused, saying she was the one who convinced her to work with him, and Millie says she knows while looking off to the side, and says she changed her mind because he's too good at challenges, and if they make it to the final 3 with them, he could win, and she is starting to forgive him for the pre-merge, but she wants the final 2 to be them, and he can mess with that. Priya understands Millie's reasoning, especially since Millie still isn't great at challenges. Priya tries to reason with Priya a bit more, saying things like she tangled with her crocodile today so she can beat him, and also he's part of the reason she won today so she'd feel bad voting him out now. But Millie cuts her off, saying they really need to vote Ripper, making Priya notice her hesitancy, and now backs off a bit, saying she'll do it for her if she's sure about it. And Millie says, trust me, it's the best for us. And with that, there's not much to talk about with the vote. I do think the turtle will still be revealed to die from Emma, causing her to get a lot of heat for that, keeping Ripper's vote on her. But the other 4 still vote Ripper, getting him eliminated. Ripper is extremely hurt as he finally started trusting people, causing him to bad talk Priya and Millie, making them both feel bad, but MK buzzes into the conversation saying she'll smell him later, before correcting herself and saying she's actually hoping she won't, and cheekily waves goodbye to him. Ripper groans as he walks back to the dock and has a confessional reflecting on his time in the show, saying he thought the last couple of his days his journey was about self-reflection and opening up to people, but today showed them that was completely wrong, and Ripper was awesome and right the whole time, and the only mistake he made was being too nice, and says at least he can leave with his head held high as a new world record holder. I think with Millie being still stressed out about the MK situation, I don't think she'd come up with the Super Alliance costumes anymore, but since they were just a fun detail that doesn't really change anything, I'm still gonna say she makes them and shows Priya. Besides, you could say that maybe she'd do it to try and get her mind off of MK, or since they aren't the last remaining alliance, it could be used as more of a show of strength to imply they're the stronger alliance because they've been together longer. It doesn't really matter, I just think it's a fun detail I don't want to get rid of. The pre-challenge doesn't have a lot to talk about besides that. I imagine Emma and MK would be talking together about how it's so great to still be working together, as MK asks if they're still going to the finale together. And MK replies of course, but then having a confessional saying of course not. Seeing Emma yesterday made MK realize she's too good to take to the finale, and if she wants a good chance at winning, there's only one other challenge flop she can take to the end. MK walks into Priya and Millie's cabin, taking the time to sarcastically compliment their costumes, making Priya say the costumes prove how tight they are as an alliance, so MK better back off if she's trying to interfere with them. MK chuckles, saying the tightness of the clothes must be a metaphor for that then, and tells Priya to relax and she just wanted to offer a proposition to them. Millie says go on, as MK says she wants to go to the final 3 of them. Shocked, they ask why she would want to do that, and MK replies saying they ask a lot of questions and they should just answer if they're in or not. Priya is hesitant about denying her, but Millie pulls her aside, afraid of rejecting MK because of the secret. Priya tells her it makes no sense for her to want to get rid of Emma because they're both stronger than her in challenges, and would be working together in the finale. It says MK has to be up to something. Millie tells Priya she might be right, but voting Emma is still their best option, as MK would be much easier to be in the finale. Priya agrees, still just saying it makes no sense, but Millie tells her to calm down and says this is for the best. So they agree to MK's terms, and MK says she'll make sure to travel with Emma and sabotage her so they can make sure she'll get voted out today. And before leaving again makes a jab at their outfits, saying she can't agree to wearing the tight spandex still. Not much would change with Chris explaining the challenge. I do think he would acknowledge and congratulate the competitors on being the first ever all-female Final Four, and I see Priya and Emma having a small scene of them bragging to each other about being the better alliance, since they're both competitive like that. And with the costumes of the Super Alliance, I could definitely see the topic coming up. MK would wink at Millie while they're fighting, obviously hinting towards her working against Emma, but Millie would just get worried and have a confessional confused about why MK would want to vote out Emma, because even if she's a threat in the finale, she has to know there's no work. But she cuts herself off by the wedgie her outfit caused, stopping her train of thought, and gets angry since the tight spandex reminds her of MK's earlier dig at them. Once the cave entrance closes and the challenge starts, MK would throw like Bowie did, slowing her and Emma down, letting Millie and Priya get to the toxic waste lake first, with this scene playing out the same as the original, with Priya throwing the coins at Millie, to which Millie only catches one. It's possible that since Millie is very challenge oriented, unlike the original where she was just kinda challenge oriented, that she could catch some more coins here. The Millie failing here wasn't due to lack of her trying, just more so her sucking at challenges, and also being distracted by the wedgie her costume was giving her, what she would still have, and then I imagine she'd be even more distracted as she keeps getting reminded of MK. So they would still end up getting the one coin. MK and Emma would get to the bats, and it's hard to tell how MK would throw here, since Bowie originally just freaked out, but I don't think that was him throwing as much as it was just him being a scaredy cat. Maybe you could say MK would be afraid of the bats, but I don't know. Bowie being afraid of the bats already felt weird and out of place to me, and I feel like typically MK keeps a very calm demeanor, kinda like Julia who didn't freak out from the bats originally. So instead I see Emma being the one to freak out from the bats, and when Chris provokes them, they chase Emma, as Emma tells MK to get the coins while she's distracting the bats, making MK go up to the coins, but because she's throwing, she just grabs some coins but accidentally drops them, making them leave the bat cave with no coins. Pia and Millie would still have their scene of riding down the mini waterfall in the cave, with Pia still throwing coins back to Millie that she doesn't catch. Millie would have a confessional after this, still thinking about why MK would want to eliminate Emma, and quickly realized that she'd only want to do that if Millie and Pia weren't working together in the finale, meaning she's planning to show the notebook to Pia today. Millie panics, but also realizes that Pia was going to find out anyway since Millie talked about it so much on the show, so she wonders why she's so upset about Pia finding out now. Emma and MK would run into the spider section with lots of coins on the reb, and it would play out similar to Bowie and Julie originally, with MK trying to say they should just leave because it's too risky, but Emma doesn't want to go, saying they could really use the coins, leading Emma to go take the coins anyways. I definitely don't see Emma throwing MK into the rebs though, since unlike Bowie and Julia, Emma and MK in this world are friends, at least to Emma, but she could just as easily throw something else into the web to get the coins to fly out, or I could see her attacking the spider when it comes out, imagining it as chase, or the most likely option, she could just save MK if the spider wraps her up when she comes down to attack, because MK would be less prepared for the attack, and given where the spider comes in from, it would be closer to MK, and Emma would free MK and they would leave before it came back, like Julia did with Bowie. The same scene of the teams running into each other would happen, playing out the same with Emma getting Millie's backpack, feeling it's light, making MK mad at them for only getting one token so far, and telling them to try harder or it's one of them going. Millie has a confessional reconsidering the plan because of her early realization that MK is going to tell Pia, saying if Emma won invincibility today then they would probably both vote Pia, meaning MK wouldn't need to reveal the secret to Pia because she's going to eliminate her, but it also means that her and Pia could only vote MK and cause a tie. Millie says Pia could probably beat MK in a tie, but MK could easily reveal the secret at this point since she would know Millie betrayed her, making Millie groan, feeling like there's no way out of this. The ending scene of the challenge also plays out very similar to the original, with MK and Emma passing the coins under the bridge, as I don't think MK would have to do a lot of convincing after Emma sees a sea monster, and since they just met with Pia and Millie and saw they only have one coin, those coins wouldn't be enough to make them win anyways, so it's not worth the risk. Once Millie and Pia come, MK insists they go down there to have a chance of winning. Millie would jump down to get the coins, having a confessional saying she isn't doing this to follow MK's plan, but instead because she feels like she owes it to Pia for blowing the challenge today, and she wants to help her friend out. They then both get eaten by the monster, but Pia gets them out and Pia wins invincibility. Millie after the challenge realizes that MK is going to tell Pia anyways, and decides she'd just be honest with Pia about what she was saying about her in the notebook, and says she's finally going to start being a good friend. It's hard to say how Pia would handle Millie just talking to her about the notebook, as we saw originally she got very mad at Millie for what she said, but the anger only lasted a single episode and was very easily forgiven, so it's possible to think that Pia wouldn't be very mad at Millie if they could just talk about it. I don't know, it's hard to gauge if Pia would really hear Millie out given the betrayal she would feel, as originally in the finale when Millie tried to explain herself and even the end of this episode, Pia was very reluctant to listen to her. But I'm not going to stress on this too much, as there's one issue of this plan of Millie trying to talk to Pia, and that's MK is still recording the confessionals. So if Millie were to say, just now talk about revealing the notebook to Pia, then that would inform MK of what Millie is trying to pull. Especially when due with the other confessionals Millie had today about going against MK, so if that, MK would realize she has to act now, and sets up the gift and notebook on Priya's bed before the vote. Priya and Millie walk in together in their cabin, ready to take off their Super Alliance clothing, as Millie's excited to get the tight clothes off. Priya laughs, saying even though they're taking it off, it doesn't take away from how super they are as a team, and Millie smiles while saying about that, showing she's about to tell Pia about the notebook, but before she can, Pia erupts in anger, already having the notebook on her bed, and yelling at Millie for betraying her, and just using her in all the challenges, when Pia thought they were actually friends. And this basically plays out with Millie trying to talk with Pia, saying she was just about to tell her about this, but Pia says sure, just like she was so eager to show her the notebook during the poll challenge, saying she can't believe she ever thought that Millie was her friend, and throws the notebook on the ground and walking out of the cabin. Once Pia walks out of the cabin, she starts to tear up a bit, with MK coming out to put an arm around her shoulder. MK says she just wants to check if their deal to vote out Emma is still on, with Pia yelling no way, trying to explain what Millie did, but MK cuts her off saying she heard what the fight was about, as they were being just a eensy bit loud. But then MK tells Pia if she's really mad at Millie, then she should take the chance to destroy her in the finale, given there's no way Millie would be able to beat Pia in the finale, and she could show Millie how much better she is than her. Pia is still sad and angry, but agrees with MK since Emma is obviously the bigger threat at the end, and even though Pia struggles with keeping her emotions in check, it's literally been her parents' lifelong mission for her to win, so Pia would realize she can't interfere with that. And with that covered, I don't think I really need to talk about the vote, as it's pretty obvious where everyone falls. Pia and MK vote for Emma, Emma votes for Millie, and Millie votes for MK, leading to Emma getting eliminated in a 2-1-1 vote. Emma is shocked and confused about how this could have happened, leading to MK snarkily saying sorry, while waving goodbye to her. Emma is hurt, turning around saying she thought they were friends, which MK responds to saying acquaintances seems more in line, and $1 million definitely beats out acquaintances. Emma gets angry realizing she was being used by MK, so she charges at MK, but Chef grabs her before she can make contact, and drags her away to the Dog of Shame. Emma reflects on her time on the show, still being mad about getting eliminated by MK, but says she at least got eliminated eliminate Chase, which was pretty awesome, but she's unsure if she can ever trust anyone again after this awful experience. I don't really know how to treat this finale, since if you're new here, whenever I get to the finale in my what ifs, I typically treat the finale as a rewrite since all the determinate results are already made, and the finale is just about writing a satisfying endings for each winner. But the finales in the new reboot seasons take a very different approach of not only having 3 people present, but also only having 1 winner. Now, looking at these 3, I think it's very obvious to see that Priya's gonna win. So because it's so obvious, I decided to still somewhat treat this finale like a rewrite because I want to end the story on a satisfying note, and Priya's obviously going to win either way, so it's not like I'm interfering with the results. But I do think in the next couple of days or so, I'm going to make a community post asking what all of you think about this, and probably make a poll to choose if you'd rather I still treat these finales as rewrites or start to actually try and follow more of what happened more since there's only 1 winner now. I don't know, just keep your eye out from that, but I'm going to treat this one like a rewrite because it works for this specific case. The pre-challenge plays out the same with all the Millie and Priya stuff. I don't think Millie would be as emotionally destroyed as the original though, since she had a lot more time to process this might happen. Also, she'd just be more so mad at MK, scolding her during the morning time for ruining her friendship. MK takes zero blame, saying Millie was the one who wrote all that stuff about her friend. She just showed Priya the truth as any good person would do. Millie has a confessional sighing and knowing that even though MK is an awful person, Millie isn't much better herself, and she really needs to make it up to Priya. Chris would still explain the challenge and bring back the past contestants as helpers. There would be a lot of mention and harsh words towards MK specifically, with Julie and Bowie talking about how dirty it was for her to hack the confessionals, but Bowie is also a little impressed. Millie has a confessional and rage at figuring this out, realizing this is how MK knew to grab her journal, and that Millie was going to confess in Priya. She grunts in anger and stands up to kick the confessional camera. Because I'm treating this like a rewrite now, I could change the helpers if I wanted to, but I actually think Damien and Ripper work just fine as Priya and Millie's helpers. Obviously MK is new here, and I could have her get Julia, but I actually think the story I'm going for would work better if MK got Caleb, so I'm just going to say she would. MK would be excited at getting Caleb, even exclaiming that she won the Reel of Losers, and Caleb responding with "you sure have," as he enjoys finally getting some respect for his abilities. Caleb has a confessional saying he knows what MK did, and he's aware she's a pretty evil person, but she also got Bowie eliminated, and Bowie got him eliminated, so the enemy of my enemy is my friend and such. Once the challenge starts and Priya and Damien run off, MK on top of Caleb's back runs up to Millie asking if she wants to work together. Millie asks why she would want to work with her, and MK knows that if either of them go to the end of Priya, there's no way they'd win. And she's already lost her chance at having friends, so she might as well regain her chance to win the money. Millie stands her ground saying she'll never work with her, and she'll get her eliminated and then let Priya win the money herself. Ripper gets angry at Millie for standing her ground with Priya, asking if he wasn't good enough to stand up for her, making MK giggle saying fat chance, referring to her saying she'll get MK eliminated. And MK tells Caleb to speed up, which he does, having her wave back at Millie as they speed ahead. Priya and Damien's scene play out the same with Priya still going too aggressive on the saw and pushing Damien around. Millie and Ripper would get to a tree, and Millie would try using the saw, but Ripper wouldn't help, because he's still mad at her for betraying him in the final 5. Millie apologizes saying that was mean of her, but she was too scared of MK blackmailing her. Ripper asks why she would be afraid of dark mail, making Millie have a confessional repeating herself that she won't write mean things in her notebook anymore, but ends up saying Ripper makes this so hard to not make fun of. Millie continues saying the point is she apologizes for hurting his feelings, but MK was the one who made her do it, and if Ripper helps her they can get MK eliminated. Ripper is still unsure, but Millie tells him about how Priya won the challenge last episode, so now all 3 of them have won 2 challenges, and it's his duty as a alpha leader to ensure one of them wins. And Ripper agrees with that sentiment because it allows him to feel like he's part of the reason they would win, so he starts helping Millie. Caleb is able to use the saw by himself with all the strength he has, making MK fan his ego more, impressive his ability of getting all the logs through the raft so quickly. She tells him to go find a paddle for her while she'll go to find some rope to tie the logs together. Caleb says on it and runs, with MK also walking off in the other direction, whispering under her breath that she has to take a little detour first. MK has a confessional saying even though Millie might want to make her nerd friendship finale possible, MK can't risk going to the end of Priya, so she's just gonna have to make it a bit harder for her raft to float. This leads to MK, like Millie originally, finding Priya's raft unattended, and lightly snips some of the supporting ropes so they'll break when she goes out on her raft. Priya would still finish her raft first and get on the lava lake. MK would come up shortly after, and watching Priya ride her raft on the lava lake, has a confessional saying she might have gone a little far. She can make it up by donating some of her winnings to charity, or Priya's family. Both start on the lava lake, but since Priya got there first, and I imagine would just be much better at rafting than MK, she gets a substantial lead. Millie at this point also comes with her raft and starts to ride it across the lava, just as Priya's raft starts to fall apart, making her struggle to not fall in. MK is able to use this opportunity to ride past Priya, ironically telling her she's on fire. Priya begs to join MK's raft, but MK says 2's kind of a crowd for a raft and revs ahead, crossing the finish line first. Once Priya's raft started to fall apart, Millie started paddling significantly harder, caught up to Priya's falling apart raft, and offers for Priya to jump on. Like the original, Priya is extremely reluctant to take Millie's help, but once her last log starts to sink, Millie rides past Priya, pulling her onto the raft and continuing to ride. They make it to the other side still on the raft, with Priya thankful that Millie saved her. Millie smiles and tells Priya to step onto land and kick MK's butt. Priya is unsure since she feels like Millie should go, but Millie insists that she was a bad friend to her and she she owes this to Priya. She also admits the reason she wrote all that bad stuff about her and everyone else is just because of her insecurity, and how it was easier for her to judge everyone else than actually try to fit in, but she's really glad to have met Priya and will always consider her best friend. Priya smiles, hugging Millie, saying she's been forgiven. Chris tells them this reunion's boring and the only interesting thing so far is them sinking into lava, noting that the raft is starting to burn, making them cut the hug early and have Priya jump onto land first, getting Millie eliminated. Priya smiles one last time at Millie, as Millie starts to walk off to the loser bench with the other contestants. Now there isn't much to talk about with the actual final challenge. I do think beforehand Priya would have some smack talk with MK, which isn't very good because she's notoriously very bad at smack talk, having Priya note that Millie is a lot better at this, and MK smirks saying she thought so, taking a jab at Priya for being bad at smack talk, and Millie for being so ruthless in the notebook. When it comes to the running up the hill bit, I do think MK would actually have the lead, as Priya really struggled with getting the goats to do what she wanted them to do, and I could see MK having some minor experience with animals, given that she really doesn't get along with humans all that much. I mean, maybe not, but it doesn't really matter if I give her the lead now because she'll still lose, so let's just say she gets the lead to the top to the mountain first for a dramatic effect. Doesn't really matter because Priya still wins. I do think MK would get to the top, finish milking and drink the goat milk first, to get in the orb before Priya, but considering Priya came in behind Bowie originally and caught up, I definitely think she could pass MK. However, they would both still fill up in their orbs, causing it to be unclear who won at first. There isn't much to talk about with the actual scene of Priya winning, as it's what happened originally, so the reaction is more or less the same, with some minor differences like Raj and Rain cheering now too, because they originally didn't cheer because it was Bowie on the other side who they like, but they don't like MK, so they cheer for Priya. And Ripper tearing up at a triple trio member winning, saying he knew it would happen exactly like this. Damien asked him if he really meant exactly like this, of her being covered in goat milk vomit, and Ripper just says exactly like this. When Chris gives the check to Priya at the final elimination ceremony, MK would be bitter with Julia coming up to her saying no need to be so down, at least she gotta learn if she could pull off a covered in goat milk vomit look, and Julia totally thinks she does, and walks off while smirking. And there you go, that's what if MK didn't blow her cover to Julia. I don't know how to feel about MK in this universe. I think she's wildly overpowered as a villain. I typically like the villains to at least face some adversity and some sort of challenge they have to overcome, but MK has like basically nothing. I mean, there could be argued like Bowie, Millie a little bit, like when she was assuming the stealing stuff, but even then, she was never really in the hot seat, she never had to really win challenges, and socially she was good because of confessionals. And I mean, it makes sense because she had access to confessionals, which is a wildly overpowered thing, so it makes sense why she was so powerful. It was just a little boring to watch her when she had no real struggles on her path to the finale. Obviously then she gets destroyed in the finale, which kind of contrasts with that, but I don't know, it's still kind of weak there. I do really enjoy having her as a villain. I think it's really fun to have her have all this power. Personally, to me, if this was the real show, I definitely want to hide more scenes of her like actually doing things, because I think her method as a villain is a very good setup for under the radar villain, where she doesn't have to be shown doing everything, but she has a lot of power. It's just not explicitly shown. Like if this was the real show, I wouldn't want to see her stealing stuff. I wouldn't want to see her having Millie's notebook. I really wouldn't want to see any of that stuff like coming into fruition until maybe like the final 5 episode where she confronts Millie during a challenge, because I think it's more interesting to not know exactly what's going on with all these things, and then MK reveals she's the one doing it. I mean, I would want to keep some of the earlier stuff she did just so those early points exist that you can connect to the later points. Like I still want to show her hacking the confessionals early on. I still want to show her being the one to record Julia and have that video go out to show her as a fraud. But I guess what I'm just trying to say is what I said in this what if notes. Typically I showed and said a lot more what she was actually doing than what I would if it was the actual show, just because I don't want you to be confused of what she's doing and have to explain it all later, because that's kind of unnecessary because you're here as a what if to understand all the things that are happening, not fully like experience it. I don't know, it's kind of a tough line to walk with her. I didn't know if I was revealing too much about her intentions or if I was not revealing enough, but either way I really do like the way she turned down the season. There are some hard pills to swallow in this universe, like Bowie going out sooner and Julia going out sooner, but I think at the end of the day, if I was ever to do a continuation to the next season, both Bowie and Julia would be helped massively by not being as threatening this season, and could actually stay probably a lot longer. Bowie probably not getting eliminated in episode 6, and Julia, I mean, staying long as she did, but actually getting to stay there for a fair reason, not because of bullshit writing. Priya and Caleb trusting her for literally no reason at all, and then her winning back-to-back challenges and stealing an idol. Yeah, none of that hopeful in the next season if I would ever do that. I also really liked how Ripper and Emma both got to have their own different things going on. They got to have a bit more screen time separate from things. I mean, Emma got a little screwed over on screen time because, you know, there's just more stuff going on with MK and Priya and Millie, especially in her elimination episode. But even pushing that aside, I think it was just nice for Emma to have a lot of episodes away from Chase and have her character not fully revolve around him like it did in the show, because that was just boring. Millie's also a lot more dynamic now to me, with an actually blackmail and to be a better friend in more than like literally one episode in the finale. I mean, there was a little bit of stuff like the final five, she was helping out Priya. There was little stuff going on, but at the end of the day, she was still not a great friend after she wanted to be a better friend. But with the blackmail of MK, I feel like it actually shined a bit more that she cared a lot about Priya and she was going to be a good friend. Also, it was nice for her to actually have like a meaningful way to show she cared about Priya in the finale, instead of them just like talking and Millie saying like, yeah, I do care, I like you. She got to actually have a meaningful gesture by giving up her game so that Priya can go to the finale and win. Alright, I've rambled on a little bit too long now, so I'm going to end the video there. Hope you enjoy the video, and bye!